Good morning, and welcome to One Baha'i, that semi-regular podcast in which I talk a little bit about my own approach to the Baha'i faith. As you know, it's nothing official. It's just me, One Baha'i. So this morning, I wanted to talk a little bit about marriage. I often say that I have the bounty of being Marielle's husband, instead of saying that she's my wife. I'm really in awe at the thought of being married to her. It's such an incredible blessing. A few years ago, we were invited to speak at a marriage conference. And it was a fascinating little conference because they had people from all different aspects of marriage. There was the newly engaged couple, the recently married couple, my wife and I, who had been married for about 10 or 15 years at that point, and the older couple, and the two widows. Now, the two widows were not widowed to each other, obviously. But it was a fascinating conference because they had the different speakers at the different points in the marriage path. And at one point, during the question and answer session, somebody asked the wonderful question, why do we need marriage? Isn't that a bit of an outdated institution? Great question. My wife and I were ready to talk about the fortress for well-being and salvation, the idea that it is a building brick in the wall of society, all these wonderful things that we could begin to talk about. You know, the intimacy, the getting to know each other, the starting of a family. But it wasn't our turn to speak. So we sat back and we listened. And the guy who was talking, who was responding to the answer, he was fascinating. He started off by saying, to understand the purpose of marriage, you first must understand the purpose of life itself. Great beginning. Loved it. And he went on and he said that the purpose of life was spiritual development. Talked a little bit about the importance of developing your virtues, your soul, your spirit. Great. Loved it. And then he said, now one of the best ways to develop spiritually, one of the necessities for spiritual development is suffering. Okay, that kind of lost me there. I have a feeling that he just kind of got sidetracked in his thinking, like I often do. So my wife and I, we often joke about helping each other suffer. In your life, you will have these friends, family, loved ones with whom you will share inside jokes. Something happens in your life, a particular set of coincidences, and a single word can bring back all those memories. And that's one of those things that helps bring you even closer together. I love that. I just love it. I love joking with Marielle about helping her suffer. A lot of people don't get it, but that's all right. That's our joke. Now you know. One of the things that you might not know about me is that I tend to laugh silently. A lot of people, they burst out laughing. They bellow, or they have a peculiar chuckle. Not me. I tend to just go. Even the camera started shaking there. So one day, shortly after Marielle and I were married, we had taken a long walk somewhere and we were really exhausted. And before we decided to make dinner, we just collapsed on the bed. And we were lying there next to each other, and I reached over and I held her hand, something I love to do. And we were only married for a couple months by this point, so we didn't know each other's quirks and idiosyncrasies. And I was lying there holding her hand, staring up at the ceiling. And I thought, how happy I am. And that made me smile. Now, the very thought that I was smiling because I was so happy, that made me even happier, so I smiled even more. And then I realized I was really grinning. I had a huge grin on my face. I couldn't believe how much I was smiling. And that made me so filled with joy, I started to chuckle. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm starting to chuckle. And that made me start to laugh. And I realized I was so happy I was laughing, and that made me laugh even more. And my poor wife, she looked over, and she didn't really know me as much as she might have. And she just saw me convulsing on the bed, and she thought I was having an epileptic fit. She was thinking, oh my gosh, are you epileptic and you didn't tell me? Do I have to call an ambulance? And she said, are you okay? And I just thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. So I started laughing even harder, which made her more concerned because I still hadn't made any sound. And she got even more concerned, which made me laugh even more, which made her more concerned, which made me laugh more, which made her more. And you get the idea. And I mean, I was just thrashing on the bed, I guess, laughing so hard. And she was ready to call an ambulance. And I had to choke out, I'm only laughing. Well, that's become another ongoing joke in our lives. If something's really funny, she'll look over to me and she'll say, do I have to call an ambulance? Well, another thing that we love to do, besides laugh, is we love to study the writings together. I always feel so blessed to be able to hear her perspectives. They're so different from mine. And for her to share her ideas of the faith with me is such a joy. I learned so much from her. One day, we were studying the Seven Valleys. Love this book. And she shared all sorts of amazing thoughts and insights and observations into it. And then she asked me, well, what do you think about it? I said, well, it reminds me of marriage. She was a little curious, so she asked. And I said, well, in marriage, you begin in the valley of search. And you look high and low for the person that will become your marriage partner. You search everywhere. And eventually, you find someone, and you fall in love. You move from the valley of search to the valley of love. And everything is amazing. The world seems so vibrant, so different. Everything, you're seeing it through rose-colored lenses. Everything is so beautiful. Everything reminds you of your loved one. And then you get to know them. You begin to see all their quirks, all their oddities, all their idiosyncrasies. I like that word today. And you're in the valley of knowledge now. At this point, you have a choice. You can either go back to the valley of search and start over again, or you can continue on to the valley of unity. Now, I want to make just one little point that Marielle said to me. She said a lot of people think of love as a rose. And whereas that might be true, they believe that when the rose petals start to fall off, the rose is dying. And that's not true. That's when the rose is maturing. It's moving from the flower to the fruit, the rose hip, the purpose of the rose. So when you're in that valley of knowledge and you're beginning to see all those oddities about your partner, that's the maturing of the love. It's not the dying of the love. It's very important to understand that, I believe. So now you move into the valley of unity. You get married. You begin a family. Everything starts coming together. It's delightful and wonderful. And you move, usually unknowingly, into the valley of contentment. You're content with your life. You are still striving to serve and develop and grow, but you're content. Life is delightful. In fact, you might even say it's wonderful. Because from the valley of contentment, you move again, possibly unknowingly, into the valley of wonderment. You're in awe. You've been married decades, and you look back and you're just astonished and amazed. Life is filled with wonder at this point. You have a family. Your children are growing up. You can't believe all the bounties that are there for you. And then your children enter university, and you go into the valley of true poverty and absolute nothingness. Marielle made sure that I told you that story today. Well, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Maybe we'll talk some more about the Seven Valleys at some point soon. I really love that book. It's quite incredible. So don't forget, if you enjoy this video, please do hit the like button, and hit the like button on all the videos you like, because it really does help the artists. Thank you again. We'll talk to you tomorrow.